Hi, Jane here. Welcome back. This week I want to talk to you about something that we haven't talked about. I'm not sure if we've ever talked about it here. I want to bring to your attention how to write a good book title. Now, some people think that that's just kind of a process of luck. Some people are even rather superstitious about it. There's all different kinds of ways that authors use to come up with book titles. Sometimes the title is the first part of the book that you know. Sometimes you don't really know what the title's going to be until right before it goes to press, and you have to know. I've worked with authors long enough I've seen it all pretty much. And it's interesting how the title works through the process of writing and publishing. Now, just some of my observations. I have one client that I've worked with long term, and the first time I met her, I kind of wish they were all like that in some ways, but they're not. But the day I met her, we were introduced in a friend's living room, and she sat down and just very matter-of-factly told me, I have 3 books to write and these are the titles of them, and she just ticked them off on her fingers as she was telling me about them. And I was like, wow, that's the first time I've ever met somebody that knew that before they even knew what the content was fully going to be about. She could tell me the titles of them. And we've produced 2 of the 3, we've published 2 of the 3 titles. We're getting ready to work on, actually we're working on a 3rd book, but there was a new book that was slipped in, so we still have that 3rd one of those first 3 to do. But it's just been interesting to watch that. That's rare in my experience. That doesn't happen all the time. People may have a word that they use to, oh, this is my cookbook, or this is my diet book, or this is my testimony book. They'll have some term that they use to refer to it. But this client actually had the exact titles of the book, and that was just kind of fun. But coming up with book titles can be challenging. It can be quite challenging. So in thinking about this, I drew back from my experience and my times with almost 15 years of working with authors and their books. And I just threw together 11 guidelines, if you will, for things to think about when you're trying to come up with a really good, powerful title for your book. And real quickly, real simple, this is not rocket science. Some of it is just common sense, and some of it just makes sense when you're talking about books and writing. So I'm just going to run through them real quickly with you and give you just a little bit of explanation. And then I want you to take them when it comes time for you to title your book. The same rules really even apply to a degree if you're just, if you're writing content for the internet, if you're doing a blog or a website of some sort. A lot of the same rules apply. Not completely, it's not across the board, but that's why I've put it mainly to books, but there's something to be gleaned here by everyone. The first guideline is keep it simple. I have worked with authors that some of it depends on, I think, behavior patterns, but they're trying to cram everything. They've got 50 words in the title. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. It just takes you so much further down the road. It makes it easy for people it doesn't confuse them. When you bring in too much, it tends to bring confusion to the reader. And the last thing you want to do is, people start a book at the title. The last thing you want to do is start them off confused. What is this about? You want to make it just very plain and simple. The second thing is you want your title to be descriptive of what your book is about. If you're writing a book about great cake recipes, then you're not going to name it something like Covered Wagons of the Old West. I mean, that's a really obvious one, but it just shows you that principle in action. You want to title your book with some descriptive title that lets people know what this book is about, gives them a heads up as to where you're going with it. Number 3 is to make your title be more like a preview than a summary of everything. It goes along with keeping it simple, but you want it. You don't want to. I have worked with people, honestly, who have just thought that the best title in the world was to just shove everything in it together, and it doesn't work. That you want it to. You don't want to share too much information in a title. You want to catch their curiosity. You want to pique their curiosity, but you don't want to just put them into sensory overload right off the bat with the title with too much in it. So keep it as think preview and not this is a synopsis of everything that happened. Number 4 is just very simply, short is good. Now, with that said, I'm sure if you're watching, if you're reading this poster within the sound of my voice in this video, you can probably think of books, maybe several, maybe many, that have longer titles, and they became very popular, and some are even classics. But by and large, as a rule of thumb, as a guideline, shorter titles tend to do better. There again, it keeps it simple. They're easier to remember. There's just a lot that goes into that. But keeping it short actually tends to facilitate a lot of these other guidelines that we're talking about here. And so wordy titles are not usually effective titles. So keep that in mind as you're moving through creating your title. Now, I don't know if you can hear or not, but the writing studio just got a visit from Robin the cat. So she always comes in the room voice first, and I don't know if she's going to attempt to make an appearance up here or not, but if she does, she's always welcome. But if you hear any strange noises in the background, that's Robin. The 5th guideline I want you to consider is that use more than one word. Usually, it's not stamped in stone, but usually it's wise to use more than one word in your title. Does that mean that it always has to be more than one word? No. Here again, you could probably come up with examples and say, well, that's not true. But the rule of thumb is you want to tend to stay away from single word ones. Number 6 is you want your title to be a unique title. What do I mean by unique? I mean, there are many books out there that you could find. There are many instances you could find one title with several authors, and the books are different, but they've all fallen on that same title. That's not necessarily a book no-no, but at the same time, especially in the age that we live in now with the internet, we do so much online. For me personally, I think it's really wisdom to do your homework before you make that final decision on what you're going to call your book. Go out online, do Google for that title that you think you want to use and see what comes up. Go to Amazon, see if there are other books by the same title. It just, here again, it saves you confusion. When somebody Googles the name of your book, you want to be what comes up there. If they go into Amazon and Google for your book, you want and search for your book, you want your title to come up. You don't want, it's better to be the title with your name under it than one of 6 books with the same title and they have to hunt for you. It happens, it's out there, and it is what it is. But where you have the opportunity to not put yourself in that position, I highly recommend that you come up with a unique, not duplicated title for your book. It's just going to work out better for you. Number 7 is kind of different, but it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, actually. And I run into it from children's books into all kinds of other books for adults. And it's just make that title easy to pronounce. Some titles, especially if they have an element of foreign language to them, it just kind of bugs me, and I don't think I'm alone in that, to find a book that I don't quite know how to pronounce the title, or it's difficult to pronounce. And so it's hard to talk about it. It's hard to talk it up with your friends. And some people, if they're on Amazon, if they're somewhere online, or if they're in a brick and mortar bookstore and they're looking at a book, sometimes a title that's hard to pronounce, unless someone has really highly recommended that book, it can be a reason why people will put that book back on the shelf and buy someone else's book. And so just make it easy for the reader, make it easy for the person purchasing your book, and make it a title that's easy to pronounce. It's not, it just trips lightly off the tongue. It's going to take you a long ways down the road. Number 8 is you need to make that title memorable. Make it easy to remember. Make one of my favorite books of all times. It's just a classic. It's Gone with the Wind. That is such an incredible title, in my humble opinion. It just says it all. It gives you a taste for what the book is about, for what happened in the story. It's just so, it's profound. To me, it's a profoundly good title for a book. Make it something that people will remember easily. That can mean all different kinds of things, but it's just vitally important. You don't, some titles are just really easy to remember. You just want to be one of those. I'll just leave it at that. This is just off the top of my head, but you just want to leave it at that. You want it to be easy to remember. Number 9 is, some people disagree with this, but I personally think that it's wise to avoid controversy. Now, if your passion is just, you have to rebut some controversial topic that's out there, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you go to title that book, or any book, as a rule of thumb, your book is more well received, especially in its initial moments when people first see it, if you title it with something that's not totally controversial. You can write about a controversy, you can give your opinion, you can do your thing with that, but you have to realize that if you choose a controversial title for your book, then when people see that book online, they see it in a bookstore, they're reading about it, they're looking into getting it, that title, that controversy just by nature divides us. And so you run the risk of that controversial title throwing a lot of people away from you. They won't even pick up the book, let alone read it, because they've already judged it on the bookshelf, so to speak, and oh, well, I don't want to read about that. Rather than if you create a title that is more of a draw to more people, you may find that you have more people on all sides of the controversy reading, checking out what you have to say to see where they stand with it. Therefore, you reach more people on a controversial topic, but you're not offending them, you're not turning them off, you're not running them away just on first glance at the title. That makes sense? Sometimes it might work, but by and large, you're going to reach more people by avoiding controversy. Number 10, your title needs to be meaningful. It needs to have meaning to it. There again, it's you want your reader, or your potential reader, to stop and think for just a minute about what your title is saying. It should pierce something in them. It should prick something. It should prick their ears up and grab their attention. And by putting meaning in it, Gone with the Wind is fraught with meaning. All kinds of meaning, some subtle and some direct. And that's very good. People are drawn to meaningful things like that. So let your title reflect that. It's the first thing that people see about your book. And the last one, number 11, is that in some situations you want your title to be catchy, clever, even humorous sometimes. And let me say, in regard to that, that is not true of every book out there. Uh, some of you might be working on a more academic work, a more serious work, very serious topics. If you're writing a story about uh, cancer or something like that, that's not a real place for catchy titles and a lot of humor, even though some people in surviving things do bring an element of humor to things. But um, by and large, a more serious work stays away from that kind of title. But something that's clever and catchy on the right piece will just put that book over the top. Your title can literally make or break the sales of your book. People are very drawn and they're very repelled by titles, what they like and what they don't like. And we don't have the ability to read everyone's mind and decide what they want and what they don't want and what's going to work. We don't know. But that's why these are guidelines. And it is very true that they are guidelines. There are no rules put in stone. I mean, short of grammar and punctuation and those kinds of things, these are guidelines. And I believe that you, your editor, your team, your publishers are great at helping you finalize book titles. Editors are good. Other people in your team that are working on your book, listen to their input, ask for their input, and listen to it and weigh it appropriately, because they have experience. Many of them have experience, and many of them are very good at, publishers, they know what's going to sell. They know what the market is looking for, and so it's very valuable input. So your team around you is very important. I hope this has helped you with titling your next book or your first book. My writing services are always available. If you need specific help with your project, please just drop me an email at janeruckeronline@gmail.com. Stop by my website at janerucker.com. Subscribe to the site, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll find my podcasts over on SoundCloud at Jane's Write, Write, Turn. I'm working on getting a podcast released every Monday afternoon. I've missed a few podcasts and videos lately. I've had some things come up in my personal world that just required all of my attention. But I'm back. So this week I've managed to do both. So let me hear from you. I hope this helps you. Have a great writing week. And in the meantime, thank you and God bless.